All right, it's now 6:30. I am going to call this meeting to order. We've already done our tech check. And Commissioner Blasey is on Zoom. Commissioner Scott Nash is present. Commissioner Guthrie is on her way, and Commissioner Bonwell is absent tonight. Okay, additions, deletions, or corrections to the agenda.
Madam Chair, I'd call your attention to the business item 6 alpha. That was has already been approved by the board. So if you didn't want to have it as a business item, you can move it down to correspondence.
Let's do that, please. Do we have to motion on that? Okay.
Go ahead. I'll second.
You motioned that we approve that it be moved down to correspondence. Do we have a second? Commissioner Blasey?
Sure, I'll second.
All right. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you for the reminder. Okay. Do either of the two of you have anything else that you want to change or move on our current agenda?
I move to approve the agenda with the one change.
I second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, consent agenda. We are going to be covering both the December 12th and the January 14th meetings. Does anyone have any questions or corrections for the last 2 months' meetings?
No.
I was a little confused because for the attendance, it showed all the commissioners present. But then when it talks about roll was taken, 4 of the 5 commissioners were present. So I don't know if that's because someone showed up late, but I was a little confused by that.
On which meeting, the December or the January
Well-
meeting? Oh, on both of them.
I do see that item on the 12th. Roll was taken. 4 or 5 commissioners were present. And but yet it has all commissioners present up at the top.
Okay, let's make that correction.
And it's actually on the other January 14th as well. Looks like we have some potential cut and paste things.
Okay. Is that something the staff can take care of?
Mhm.
All right. Please do so. Any other additions or corrections to those 2 meetings? Or to the minutes for those 2 meetings?
I move to approve the minutes with the correction.
Second. I second.
I
I
Move-
second.
Moved and seconded with the correction for the attendance on both months' meetings. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Motion passes. All right, we are now moving into the public input portion of our meeting. I would ask you to keep it to 3 minutes per speaker, and don't forget to hit the little button so you can see the blue light when you speak, so that everybody on Zoom and everybody else can hear you.
Tom Dobson, 10260 El Paso Avenue. I'm here tonight to maybe get some clarification as to the the role planning commission, and obviously they're not for the trustees, but also they, in relative to the activities and zoning, planning. Some
His
projects.
voice doesn't come over Zoom.
We'll get it fixed.
Um,
Okay, go ahead, please.
You're gonna have to have this.
I think they can hear me just fine.
Well, unfortunately,
right.
we also have to have it available for the
Okay,
people
if
on
I can continue.
listening on Zoom. One of our commissioners is zooming in tonight, so
That's
I
fine.
would like to make him,
Okay.
make sure he can hear
Well,
you.
if he can hear, he can express that.
That's good now. Thank
Okay.
you.
Anyway. So I'm a little looking for a little more clarification. And what prompted this was a visit to the town hall a week or so ago.
Mhm.
I own a property on El Paso Avenue, including the lot that's at the corner of the north corner of Chipeta Park Road and or UPass Avenue there and El Paso. And I was looking for some clarification what the zoning was.
Mhm.
What I found out was that from the mayor, that's who I was told I had to talk to. That there's a move on, if I could use that expression, to change the zoning from the old firehouse all the way down to some sort of a mixed commercial residential usage. That may be good, that may be bad, but it raised the question to me as to what is the process for the landowners along that strip in terms of their property values, in terms of their property rights and so forth. Because what I found was a map that was already color coded and kind of a done deal.
Mhm.
So that was one concern. Then in the course of that, the mayor said very emphatically regarding two lots next to the one I just described on the corner that are owned by Color Springs Utilities and currently are a natural area. And he said, I want to turn that into a parking lot. Scrape it and turn it into a parking lot, which surprised me. I asked why, and he said it's a fire hazard. I said, it's also a place where because I'm live near there, wildlife congregate there, and it's a good place for them to seek some protection. It's also in the floodplain. I'm sure if
Is that the area that's shoulders the stream down there? Is that what the area you're talking about?
So if you come off of El Paso Street before it hits, what is it, Chipeta Park Road or UPass Avenue?
Mhm.
Okay, the first lot is chain link.
Mhm.
Okay, that's mine. It's the next two up from that, going
Okay.
towards the fire hall.
Okay.
So anyway, the choice of words bothered me a lot because the choice of words were, I want to bulldoze this and turn this into a parking lot. And
Mhm.
I personally, I value everyone's efforts in regards to the town and their good intentions, but I kind of question some of the projects and the quality of the projects that we've done recently. And I said to myself, so is this another one of these that's perhaps not thought out well enough? And why is it I, as opposed to the town is thinking, as opposed to the board is thinking, or the planning commission thinks that would be a good use? So that's what prompted all that. Said to myself, what is the due diligence? What is the checks and balances between what one individual who happens to be a mayor or whoever's leading the charge and the planning process and the board of trustees process? I have concerns that there's not sufficient questioning. There's not sufficient citizen input, and that's why I'm here. So,
Okay. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
thank you.
To
I
address
would
some of
like to
those,
address
If-
the
go
comment
ahead.
if I could. First off, thanks for coming in. You actually pointed out one of the errors that we had on our new zoning map. And that's the piece that you had originally were zoned business. That's the piece that we had to recolor code to keep it as effectively business. It's called MX1 now. Okay, so it's we've changed the map to make it match what it originally was. So first off, thank you for coming in. That actually pointed out one of the errors. The board actually had on that, the CSU property, it's been a board direction to begin pursuing what it would take to actually utilize that for the town. There's a lot more work left. We have to send out letters to all the property owners within 150 feet. And then if the board actually does want to keep pursuing it, we will have to pursue a rezoning for that parcel to MX1. We are not rezoning all those other orange parcels to MX1. The only one in question might be the CSU property, which we are exploring right now. Do I want it? Absolutely.
For the benefit of the town.
For the benefit of the town. But it is still very preliminary. It's far from a done deal.
So this is something that's been bounced around as an idea for 1 or 2 years that I'm aware of at least. And the concern is that there's not enough temporary parking and storage area for projects that are ongoing. And so they're working to see if they can reach an agreement with CSU to use that for that purpose, just that one lot. Now, that being said, yes, like the mayor said, private property owners that are around that area will absolutely have a chance to comment and present their concerns and be heard. Go ahead. Can you come back up here just so, again? Thank you.
So in that regard, the question for me would be, who thinks in terms of, that's the entrance to the town? And welcome to Green Mountain Falls. Here's another great gravel parking lot with piles of crap in it and a couple, public works trucks parked there.
Okay.
I mean, who thinks about that? Because
No, it's a valid
Yeah,
concern.
and I would hope that would be a major deterrent to
Yeah.
proceeding with that.
And I would suggest that you bring that up to the Board of Trustees. They're the ones that are making those determinations. I can't, but you have a valid
Yeah,
point.
and I would think the planning commission would have some thoughts on that and would express those thoughts to the board of trustees.
We
Now,
carry out.
you may be favorable for it or indifferent, but if you had those, that's my concern, is what is the hierarchy of thinking as it progresses, and
Mhm.
then the questioning of the logic. So, thank you.
Understood.
Thank you.
Again, if I could address that, yes, it would have to come in front of the planning commission before we go through with any rezoning.
Yeah. And our primary purpose is to make sure it falls in line with the land use code. And again, if there's concerns or things that need to be addressed that are not appropriately addressed in that, then we relook that. Do we have any other public comments?
Anyone on Zoom, would you like to comment? Not seeing any hands raised.
Okay, nothing heard. I am ending the public input period and moving on to reports. Commissioners, do we have any reports?
No.
I think you do.
Yes, I want to report that I heard from one of our property owners that they've been waiting over a year for their for the decision to be made on plans for building.
We will need an address.
So what I'd like to propose, rather than going into the specifics of this particular case, is that we had a really nice chart in our packet last time
Mhm.
of,
It's still here. It's in the bottom, at the bottom of it.
okay. So I think what might be helpful is if we had, let's see.
Could you
so
possibly scroll down to that chart at the bottom that tracks all of the projects in the works? I think it's the very last piece. Oh my God, that's not a chart. I can't even read that with my glasses on.
So the baseline project number, does that correspond with a date? I guess not.
No, it does not.
So,
It's numeric.
so the only date we have associated with a project would be what, the application fee?
Looks
When that
like
was
there's a
received?
lot of dates in the notes, Catherine.
Well, okay, so the first thing we need to track is the actual address. If we don't have the address, then we'll have to go,
Yeah, or the property
it's-
owner name, which they have listed as well, so.
yeah, we'll have to do searches either by owner name or the builder or something, but we need something to search.
Well, what I, really, my issue is a timeline. You know, I know that this isn't the first time there's been an issue with there being, a delay in a project because it took months and months for it to be processed. And this is typically going through not directly the planning commission,
Mhm.
but
Again, we need
Through
an
the
address.
contractor.
We need something to search on to investigate the matter. I will tell you for a fact, I have had people complain, and when we research it, there have been applications that have been deficient. And even though you tell them exactly what they need to bring in, they are still coming in deficient with the
okay.
same items. And so there's been one of them that's been a lot of back and forth. And so we will need an address to research it.
Okay, so the first one on the list, it says that the variance application is pending.
Okay, so that
Yes.
is the,
But there's a
Falls.
variance fee that will need to be paid. We can't process a variance until they pay the fee.
just for my own understanding, how does that outstanding, not debt, but, balance get communicated to the landowner that, hey, here's the next step? I know that y'all
We-
communicated, I don't know how
generally-
that is.
The way from what I've observed, it's been done via email.
Mhm.
Again, on the specific one in question, we would need to go back and research and make sure, okay, did they actually get the response? Did the email actually go out?
Okay,
So, yeah. But we need something to go on the
And-
research.
is
Otherwise, we're just,
the
kinda going in the dark here.
7325 Myrtle Street owned by, owned by Hughes, correct? Or is that the first one? It could be. No, I mean, is that the first one in the chart? Okay, is that the one you're referring to?
Yeah, so the
Okay.
variance application, where it says the variance application is pending, that's because the variance fee has not been received?
either that or the application itself.
Okay, so staff, is that something that y'all could please look into for us?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank
I
you.
mean, if that's the one that's in question, we can go investigate and try to figure out, okay, where are we really at?
And we can confirm, yes, that's the one in question, right?
Yes.
Okay, number one. And then potentially reach out to them again. Because I know for myself, a lot of emails get lost. It depends on,
Yeah, I don't know.
traffic.
I don't know if they're aware of that variance fee or not.
okay,
It's just been, I think they've been in contact with,
yeah, it looks
Our-
like the initial application was
our
in,
contractor.
what's it, August of 2023, building permit January 24. So it's definitely been dragging on, but if y'all could help with that, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, and I would also hope that we're not incurring a bunch of costs, because I know sometimes when when I've worked with contractors, it's kind of in their best interest to drag things on. So not only in the interest of our applicants, but also in the interest of the town, we probably want to tighten things up when possible.
Yep. And
That's one of the reasons why the board has chosen to try to pull things back in-house was we were experiencing quite a few costs.
Yeah, and having this in place is extraordinarily helpful because it gives us a better idea of, could you make it a little smaller so I can see the other? Okay, so if you go over to the far right, project status, and then the next one over, if you can move over, thank you. Okay, so in review, on hold, approved. So where does it say who the next step belongs to? Because that's the piece that I think would be very helpful. Either under project status that, hey, it's back with the owner or landowner, or it's with the piece or waiting PC or, BOT or planner review. That would, I think, help us identify at least where it's stuck. And I
Sounds good. Thank you.
So yeah, I'll talk about what I found out about the tiny home definition we're proposing and how it affects the ADU during the 6B2, right? As opposed to now.
this is good.
You want me to talk about it now?
Okay, did you have anything to report on staff? Did you want to report on?
It can be either of you. I don't, this is where we need to at least have the information presented to us and then we go into discussion afterwards.
So there's no new applications that we've come across. There will be two new ones coming down the pipeline, but nothing. Nothing formal yet, and
Okay.
I will get on the updating the checklist for you guys.
Okay. All right, so please continue about the tiny homes and.
Okay, so yeah, my report is I talked to both Rocky Mountain Modular Homes up in Woodland Park and also tiny home experts down in Colorado Springs, and just got a bunch of information and I put it in our packet so you guys could see what kind of stuff I was looking at. But the bottom line is what I found out is that tiny homes don't have any specific building standard. So for example, like a manufactured home is often the HUD standard, for houses, we use Pikes Peak Building, Regional Building Code, right? Tiny homes are all over the board. They can be an RV standard, they can be just a small home, they can be they can be a lot of things. So I put a table in there kind of showing you how our different structures compare and how our proposed tiny home definition would play into that. So I know we talked last time quite a bit about the square footage, which was a good discussion.
Mhm.
But the other pieces of this proposed definition is constructed on a permanent foundation and compliant with the building code. So to that end, I went ahead and put in the packet here what Pikes Peak Regional Building Code specifies for both of those items, a permanent foundation. And of course, they have the building codes of a home, right? So I think I came to the conclusion our definition is pretty good because Green Mountain Falls relies on Pikes Peak
Mhm.
Regional Building Code. And I don't think we should add anything to that or change it, and muck with it and add anything that would, that's in their ballpark. Does that make sense? So you guys can look at the packet, or you probably already did, but
Mhm.
yeah, I went through and actually gave you some examples of what people are selling as tiny homes versus manufactured homes versus modular homes. And it all really comes down to what standard they're building to, was my big takeaway there.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate your research. That was very helpful and thorough. Okay, and no further reports from staff?
No.
Okay, let's move on to business. And the first one we're going to be discussing is the committee appointment procedure. Wait, that was never, scratch that. That was moved. That was moved down to correspondence. All right. We are going to be discussing the ordinance and the ADUs. So let me open it up to public hearing. It is now 6:57.
Hi there. Can you hear me? Hi, Caleb Patterson, Town Manager. Sorry for coming in here a little bit late, guys. I don't mean to take the podium to get you on your feet. Thank you for having me. I'm just trying to learn as I start with the town and get this mic right. I do have a question. Are the ADUs for the planning, as the planning commission sees it, are the ADUs going primary usage as a main dwelling? Or are we trying to?
Accessories, second, it's a smaller secondary dwelling.
Okay, so I do see that the three types.
Yes. And it's. It could be bigger. Yeah. I mean, also dependent upon how large or small their original home is. If they have a tiny little cabin, it could actually be larger, but it's still a secondary home.
Yeah, we have a max of 1,000 feet, Caleb.
Okay, well, my apologies. I think I phrased that wrong. The tiny home isn't meant to be an ADU is what I meant to say. Or are tiny homes allowed to be a main dwelling?
We
Or is it
are,
the 1,000 square feet that you just mentioned?
So the reality is with our current land use code, anyone could build a small home, a tiny home.
Mhm.
But for clarity, when people look at our land use code, the concern was they don't see the tiny home defined. So we are proposing, we're going to talk about, I guess, that we define a tiny home as a structure under 400 square feet on a permanent foundation. So that's what's under discussion.
Mhm.
But you can already build an ADU. We have that defined in our code.
Yeah, it is not exclusively an ADU, but we're including it as an ADU.
Okay, thank you. One couple more
It
questions.
should be the primary. And we're,
Yes.
Couple more questions. The manufactured home, I do see it is not allowed as an ADU. Can I ask why? I know I'm going to be talking with the board about this later. I just want to get all the information now. So can I ask why the manufactured home is not allowed as an ADU?
It came down to permanent foundations.
Okay, what if it was tied down? What if they had tied downs?
We don't currently allow a tied down structure as an ADU or a primary residence. Unless a manufactured home could be like that, but only in a manufactured home park. Do I have that correct?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Which
I'm
is
just,
not currently zoned within GMF. If there's an instance that comes up and they can apply for a variance for
Mhm.
consideration.
Okay,
But,
I would,
it's-
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but again, especially in floodplains, it comes down to, it has to be a permanent foundation.
Yeah, I would
Chassis.
consider making that manufactured home allowed to be tied down or on a stem wall. The only reason is because the majority of these people who make the tiny homes, they do come in manufacture, right? So in that way, the home is a little bit cheaper and the financing and options are a little bit tough for ADUs. So I've realized that's what a lot of communities in Colorado are facing at the moment. So that would be my only suggestion. Thank you. That's it.
Okay.
Go ahead. So can we go look at the, I put the definition of a permanent foundation from PPRB in here. Right there. So a permanent foundation is a foundation system designed to support the unit and comply with all applicable provisions of the building code. So we don't, Green Mountain Falls doesn't actually say what constitutes a permanent foundation. And I do know, talking to the tiny home experts, and I put that in the report farther down, is they are lobbying the state to push down to the counties that a permanent foundation for a tiny home would be a tie down. So again, I feel like we should be just sticking with what our authority is, PPRB, and let that run its course. You know, what will happen in 2 or 3 years, but that, you know, that to me opens the door to that a little bit, if that's what comes down the pike.
Thank you, both. Do we have any other points of discussion for the public hearing? Okay. Nothing heard. It is now 7:02 and I am closing the public hearing. All right, let's move on to the planning commissioning or commission officers. Nope. Oh, I'm sorry, recommendation. Recommendation to the board regarding the ordinance we just discussed. Okay. So, given the information that we've heard about the ADUs and the tiny homes and the manufactured homes, this is what we currently have written that we have discussed to propose to the Board of Trustees for their approval. Does anybody have any concerns or things that need to be changed before we do so?
Rocco, you're being very quiet.
Yeah, I reviewed it. I guess my comments just stand from last meeting that we tried to simplify the code. I'm not sure that this enhances that after we did the code rewrite. But I think that's probably the matter at hand is, are we simplifying or what is this accomplishing?
It's adding clarification because these are questions that are starting to come up in some of the applications that we're seeing. And so
Right,
rather
but
than leave it for interpretation or, you know, somebody's mood, it's putting it into or specifying exactly what those mean and what or how we intend it.
yeah, so
As
again,
counted.
I think a lot of this is just wrapped into ADUs in general. And so I think, you know, that's what you need to decide if you want to just keep it simple under the ADU umbrella, or if you want to define every instance that comes up.
So the tiny home definition, Rocco, is just the definition, right? So and that's the clarity part, that people can look and actually see what we mean by tiny home. And then, the only thing we added, changed it all in the accessory dwelling unit,
Including a tiny home.
is the phrase including a tiny home. I do hear what you're saying. I mean, they can already do this. So I hear what you're saying, but we're trying to cut down staff time is my,
Right. There was a lot of confusion about the difference, and it may be splitting hairs, but the difference between tiny homes and manufactured homes. And that's where we are drawing that distinction. And so in order to do so, manufactured homes are already readily defined in many places. Tiny home is not. And so that's the only thing we've really added.
Yeah, there might be ripple effects. The chart that lists the different structures and where they're allowed. I think tiny homes may need to be added to that potentially.
that was just my research, Rocco, that chart. That was. What's he talking about?
I think he's talking about the allowed uses chart that's
Well,
in the code, section 12.
Well, the allowed uses chart refers to ADUs, and then we're adding tiny home as a kind of ADU. So I think we're covering that.
yeah, that's still
Rocco?
covered under the ADU umbrella. It's not specifying it as separate than an ADU. Did you have something?
Yeah,
Commissioner Guthrie?
I think I was hoping that we wouldn't see that a manufactured home shall not be used as an accessory dwelling unit. I just think that sounds like it's going to be very problematic.
I'm sorry, what's your point, Catherine?
A
So we've
a
actually left the,
manufactured home-
we've actually put this back to what it currently says in our land use code, because that's what we talked about last time.
Mhm.
So this is the only difference between this paragraph, accessory dwelling unit. The only difference is including the phrase, including a tiny home. So that's the only difference from our current land use code to this paragraph. Now, and knowing that, say that again now.
I think that a tiny home, some tiny homes could arguably be a manufactured home.
They can't, because those are, manufactured homes are defined in PPRB as the HUD standard. And a tiny home is defined to building code, which is PPRB's building code. Does that make sense? So manufactured homes are HUD standard.
So they're not PPRD standard?
So PPRB defines a manufactured home as the HUD standard. I think I put that definition in here, did I?
So
Yeah, here it is here. So you see the PPRD there, that's a manufactured home. So they specifically call it a HUD construction. So if you look at Colorado Springs code, I put that in here too. They actually go farther. They say it has to be a HUD manufacturer, plus it has to be basically built for our weather here.
I don't understand why we don't allow those.
They weren't allowed in I can't answer that because I haven't been on the planning board long enough, but it's in our current code.
Well,
So
I know,
maybe-
I know it's in the current code, but I remember some arguments years ago where even a tough shed was not allowed.
So
in town.
we do allow sheds.
I know they do now, but I'm telling you that there was a time when that was not the case.
Right.
And, I mean, it's not that they didn't occur, but officially they were not allowed. And neighbors would come and complain, hey, my neighbor has a tough shed, I can see it, I mean, seriously, so I don't know that we want a manufacturer. That's what I was hoping was gonna go away. I knew wheels were a problem.
Well, there's nothing going away here because
That
this
was-
is our current
That
code.
was currently what was in there. The only thing we've changed is adding tiny home to the ADU umbrella.
Okay,
Okay, if I might add something, the original
Please.
versions of this did strike the manufactured home.
Right.
So a manufactured home would have been allowed.
Yes.
But that was the
So
original
Catherine,
version.
to be specific, you would like to allow manufactured homes as ADUs. Am I hearing you correctly?
Yes, I think that's a good idea. I mean, I think we should at least discuss it before we finalize this change. I mean,
The
does,
current
is,
land use code specifies that manufactured homes are only allowed in the areas that are coded for those. And if we need to change that in the future, we can. But right now, we are working with the land use code that we currently have.
okay, so you just want to,
I mean, you're
Expand
bringing
it
up a
to
good
tiny
point.
homes.
And so I think that may be a discussion we perhaps tackle next meeting.
so, because it's an expense to change the code. I mean, just to,
Mhm.
I, I wonder if we could do this on a case-by-case basis, like a tiny home. If we get an application for a tiny home, to do it on a case-by-case basis until we clean this up.
I think one of the reasons we added it back into the not prohibited was, again, because of it didn't have a permanent chassis, because we went into that the last 2 months meetings
Yeah.
discussing this, and we decided collectively, and part of that, you two weren't here for, so apologies for that, but we decided to add it back in because it doesn't have that permanent foundation that we require.
So what I understood from last week, and I guess I misunderstood perhaps, is that was going to be what was added to the code, was that they had to have a permanent foundation.
That is what so to be clear, can we bring the ordinance, go back to the ordinance here? So I think that we went through this last month
already-
too.
yeah.
The problem is that you have to read this carefully because we're actually saying what can be an ADU here, not what can't be. So
The last sentence does specify what can't be. A manufactured
Right.
home or recreational vehicle, travel
Right.
trailer, camper, or.
So
small vehicle
that's a
shall-
negative sentence. So just to be clear, Catherine, you do or don't want manufactured homes as ADUs?
She wants them to be included as an ADU.
Because I thought you were saying the opposite last month.
No, I think, we want to support this. I want to support ADUs and a manufactured home. I wouldn't want to rule it out. I think a permanent foundation makes sense rather than being on wheels.
So, okay, so can we look at the definition of a manufactured home?
Yeah, 'cause
Because it
that's-
specifically says on a permanent chassis. I mean, so let me say it this
Okay.
way, Catherine. So if you look at the packet, this stuff here, actually. So Rocky Mountain Modular Home has, manufactured homes, modular homes, and some that are classified as both. And what she explained to me is it has all to do about the standards to which the structure is built. So manufactured homes to the HUD standard generally, modular homes to the local regional building code. So if we're going to if somebody wanted to put in a structure over 400 square feet and they're going to put it on a foundation, we already allow that. So when you look at these pictures, that's a tiny home. Let's go down to these pictures here. So like that right there's a modular, looks pretty nice. I would build that. And then there's one that I stuck in here, this little ADU, this 510 square foot ADU. That is considered manufactured, but they can take it off and put it on a foundation.
So on your chart here, under this table, it says that a manufactured home can be on a permanent foundation or not.
Yeah, that's what our definition in Green Mountain Falls is.
So
Yeah.
I would like that to be changed to, a permanent foundation. So they need to be on a permanent foundation.
So to be clear, Catherine, I know this, I've read this far too much. Um, But to be clear, we do not currently allow manufactured homes at all unless they're in a manufactured home park or zoning.
Correct.
So we don't currently allow manufactured homes as an ADU. So if someone wanted to build a manufactured home park, then I guess then they could be on a permanent foundation or not in that park.
Okay, so, sounds like I'm jumping the gun, but I think in the long run, that's what I'd like to see,
Okay.
is that we would allow manufactured homes on a permanent foundation.
Can the staff note that as a
Mhm.
recommended, or recommended something to consider the next time we update the code
So I guess one of the things I learned by
for consideration?
my
just
research
a recommendation.
is, if you're gonna stick something on a permanent foundation, you're probably gonna buy a modular because it's cheaper. So they transport it on a chassis and then they attach it to the foundation. So, most people would not attach a manufactured home with wheels on it and a chassis on a foundation anyway, because you're just kind of wasting your money. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Commissioner Blasey, did you have anything you wanted to add to this discussion?
No.
Okay.
So could I get a summary, please? It sounds like the recommendation is to
We are leaving it as currently written.
leaving it as currently written.
No additional changes or modifications will be made to the one that is being presented now. Do I have,
Okay.
do I have a motion to recommend this to the board for their consideration?
Unless Catherine wants to discuss it more. Okay. Okay, let's see, what's the name of this guy?
It is ordinance 2024-03 ADUs.
I recommend that we, I move that we recommend ordinance, 2024-03 to the Board of Trustees for their, approval.
Do I have a second?
I'm completely confused about this. So this is a change.
The only change to our land use code here is the definition of a tiny home and including tiny home as a
Yes.
ADU.
We're not making changes to what is written up here because this is based on our discussion from last month. And this is what we agreed is what we want in here for a recommendation to the board to approve these additions and changes. Do I have a second?
Well, I could
You're
second.
confusing me, Catherine, because I'm really.
I really think,
I'm
I think
trying
it's
to
a waste,
understand what
I
you're
think it's a
saying.
waste of money to make this change in
You
the
know,
code.
I'm not sure it's a waste of money because it's like, it gets updated in Civic Plus and it's like a subscription thing. We get, we do all our updates at once. So that's not really a cost.
Okay, so I'm actually going to call a vote on this one.
Okay.
I am going to call a vote yay. That means that we are recommending for
You
to
can't
send it
call
up.
a vote. It hasn't been seconded.
So if it doesn't cost anything, that makes a difference to me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I'll
Okay.
second.
Okay.
Thank you, Rocco. All right, so now that it's been moved and seconded, let's get a vote. Yay means that we're recommending it to the board for their consideration for approval. Nay, that we are leaving this alone and not making any changes. So Commissioner Scott Nash,
I vote yay.
Commissioner Guthrie,
Yay.
Commissioner Blasey,
Nay.
and I vote yay. So the yays have it. Thank you all. And
Okay,
the
just,
motion,
just an FYI. We need to check out whether or not it has to be totally reposted for the board,
okay,
which may mean reposting in the Gazette, putting up a new sign and whatnot. We still have some investigation left to do on that. That's just an FYI.
thank you. And is that something that could possibly happen prior to the next Board of Trustee meeting?
Unknown.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you all for your discussion on that. This has been something we've been working on for many, many months, and I
Thank-
appreciate all of your input.
Thank you for all that research. Shelley.
Yes, thank you.
And I also wonder how much it cost?
Oh, the what? A tiny home?
No, this
I have those
whole-
numbers.
This whole issue.
Us
cost-
just talking about it, you mean?
Well, the research that was not done by you.
If we actually had captured all of the staff time, we could probably estimate the cost, and if we had any legal review time in it. I don't
There
think
was at
we've-
least one legal review early on.
Yeah, I don't think we captured all the staff time.
Okay. All right, moving on to the next item of business. Planning Commissioner officers. We need a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary. How does that get done by motions, or how does that actually work? Because
You can nominate.
okay, and then it's a vote or a motion, or how does this
Yeah,
work
vote.
again?
Nominate and vote's probably
Okay.
the easiest.
I nominate Brandy Morales for Chair of Planning Commission.
Second that.
Fine. Okay, thank you.
Has there been a secretary?
There hasn't, but it would be useful to have a secretary, to have someone to write up recommendations to the board and so on. We've been sort of relying on staff, but actually, most of our committees do it with a secretary. Do I have that right?
So this,
Okay.
so the secretary would not be responsible for minutes.
Oh, that's a great question. The secretary would not, Bo and Kate or Kate would do them from the Zoom recording. That's a good question.
I think they would be responsible for capturing due outs and requests. Right? The secretary is responsible for capturing due outs and requests that need to go to the staff.
Well, yeah, that and just like if you look at like the PRT committee, or anything that comes into the board, the secretaries usually write those memos, that kind of stuff, as
Okay.
opposed to using staff time.
So it's and town manager had to step out briefly, but he is looking at standardizing a lot of that so that we have basically a standard format that goes to the board. And that would be any kind of recommendation
Okay.
would then be captured that way.
That would
to the
definitely
board.
help it.
Yep.
All right, Commissioner Bonwell has been serving as the vice chair. Unfortunately, she's not here tonight, so I'm a little hesitant to do that in her absence, but I guess we can discuss it if y'all have recommendations.
I don't have any reservations in nominating her.
Oh, absolutely.
I'll second.
Okay,
Did you actually do a vote for the chair?
no, we'll go back and do that one right now.
Okay.
Okay, so this is awkward. Those in favor of myself, Morales, being appointed as the commission chair, say aye.
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 Y'all are gonna have to bribe me later. Okay, thank you. The ayes have it. I will accept. Thank you for your vote of confidence.
Thank you.
We'll have to wait to hear back from Commissioner Bonwell whether she's willing to accept another term as the vice chair. I just don't want to surprise her with that if that's something she was not able or willing to do with her busy schedule. So moving on to the next one. Actually, let's go ahead and vote. Shit. No, let's hold off on the vote for the vice chair. That will
Well,
be.
we can always elect her and she can say she doesn't want to do it. Is that the proper order or the other way?
Either way, really, it's in the code that we're supposed to elect the officers really kind of around the first of the year.
Okay, let's
It-
do
you
that.
know.
We can vote to elect her and then I will reach out to her for her acceptance or not. Okay, so all in favor of Commissioner Bonwell continue as the vice chair?
Aye.
Aye. Rocco?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. And who would like to be nominated as secretary?
I would love for Shelley to, Scott Nash to be our secretary.
Second.
That looks like a not it knows to me.
I actually don't mind doing it. I love details.
Okay.
You're so good at it.
All right. Commissioner Scott Nash has been recommended as the secretary. All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Do I vote for myself? I don't know.
All right. Yes. Okay.
Aye.
So thank you. Okay, so that completes our business. Let's move on to correspondence. And part of that is the committee appointment procedure that was in all of our packets.
Correct. That was actually approved by the board at our last meeting and it's in the book.
Okay. And it shows a clear flow chart on how that works. Were there any concerns or questions on that we would like to address back to the board?
I, this is sort of a completely different issue, but related, I think. I think there also needs to be a clear path for the removal of a member.
That's actually handled in our code and that's a board action.
Okay. I mean, I'm not saying that it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
it's something that we would
The,
do.
the board, that would be a board. I would say that probably, I'm trying to remember the code. It's in, I believe it's in section 2, but it's, I think it says the board can remove any committee member.
And I
And I
imagine-
think it's for any reason.
Oh,
And I imagine if it's something that
Yeah.
comes from the committee itself, that would be something that would need to be discussed and voted on and recommended to the board for their discussion and approval.
well, if it's that cut and dry, I guess.
Yeah, something like, for example, if you had a committee member that didn't show up for a year and, was being unresponsive to, say, the chair's request for a input on their participation, you could vote to recommend to the board that they be removed due to lack of participation. That's just a purely off the cuff example.
But essentially, we all serve at, at the boards,
Yeah, I can look that up here real
at
quick.
the will of the board or not.
Well, I mean, we were all voted for. by- But ultimately the board would be the deciding factor if it came down to something
Mhm.
that was egregious.
Okay. I just thought there might be a process.
There is. Okay, so can we take a quick look at the project list again? So we can actually look at it this time? Okay. So. So that one's in review. It's waiting it's waiting for the variance fee. The next one down on hold. Yeah, again, this is hard to determine where it's at without knowing who the next step is, whether it's, BOT or coming to us, or whether it's with planner. If you happen to know that, if you could just give us a quick spin up on those, just, it doesn't have to be all the details, but just a wave top.
And you're looking for basically just next action, correct?
Yeah.
Next action by, it's just an additional column that we just dropped
Yes.
in next
But I
action.
mean, as far as like, just, I'm not sure if you're familiar with these enough yet to do that, but if you could just, hey, here's where it just wave tops. I would greatly appreciate that. Mostly so we know what's coming towards us, but also as Commissioner Guthrie brought up, there's occasionally things that get bogged down, and sometimes it's just a matter of miscommunication or a lost email.
So on the second one, says applicant wishes to address the PC regarding definition of an accessory structure. Has that happened?
I think that might be a little out of date. We did have a meeting with
Okay.
that particular applicant. My take is they would have preferred to have a garage be defined as attached or detached. Right now, our code says it's purely detached. And so when you attach it, it becomes part of the primary structure. It's no longer an accessory use. And at that point, there's an exclusion for I think it's one of the stormwater items. That if it's an accessory structure, you don't have to provide basically the compliance with the code. If it's attached to the primary structure now, it does. And so, yeah, right
Hey-
now that would take a code rewrite to change the definition of garage. And so, yeah, that's where it was at. We pointed it out. I think he's probably going to be coming back in at some point. But yeah, we tried to clarify as much as we could.
So Todd, are you saying that you can't have an attached ADU?
To be an accessory structure, it has to be detached.
Okay, so I'm just gonna read our accessory dwelling unit on our land use code. And maybe this is something that's been updated that hasn't been pushed through Civic Plus. So our current code says accessory dwelling unit means a subordinate dwelling unit attached or detached from a primary structure, blah, blah, blah. Did you know that?
So an accessory dwelling unit could be like over the garage, living space that would be attached. But right now, a garage is defined as detached. So yeah, I get where you're coming from. What I said doesn't seem to align up well, but right now, from what our code says, garage is detached. And in my mind, what I have to think of is, okay, if it's attached as a garage, that's now primary structure. You can have an ADU, supposedly mother-in-law suites over the top of garages. That can happen. So yeah, there may be a little bit of something there we may need to think about.
Did they apply for a variance in this case?
They were given several actions. And he's going to be coming back to us with, I believe he's coming back to us with responses on those actions.
Okay. All right, so third one down's been approved. You can scroll down. Okay. Let's see that one, survey received. Can you move over to the right a little bit? Okay. Yes, I've just So it's sent out to referral. What does that mean? Survey received, minor subdivision sent out for referral or on referral.
Which one is that one?
And I'm sorry, this is not meant to be a pop quiz. If y'all don't have the answer, that's okay. Okay. So does that need to be, it's the currently the top one right now at the bottom or in red, it says survey received
Okay.
minor subdivision.
There were some of these that made more sense to leave with baseline instead of taking back in with us, and that one is still with baseline.
Okay. All right, and what is our timeline? Because it says it was due in January. And I'm hoping we've gotten any, no, I'm I'm asking staff for,
We don't have any additional information.
so how does GMF government address that with baseline when they're past the deadline? When they haven't gotten back by the deadline given? Just from my understanding.
We haven't really had to deal with it yet.
Okay.
And so right now I can't give you an answer. So
Understood.
we just can't give you an answer.
Okay,
Okay?
still figuring it out.
We're still in transition. We're trying to take some of these things back on our own, but some of them made more sense to leave with baseline. If baseline hasn't updated this, we'd have to see if they've updated this. Yeah, we do. We don't?
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So
Anyway,
is that
so
something
there's
staff's gonna review?
transition things that we're going to be probably fumbling with here for a while.
Of course, understood.
So
That is
that's it.
nature of transition. Thank you.
So it looks like the next step on that particular one, waiting on major site plan resubmittal due February 27th.
On which one, Rocco? Oh, okay.
Curtis Edson.
Oh, so it's, okay. Thank you. Okay. So that'll be coming up due at the end of the month, and hopefully they'll get that in and it'll be taken care of. Okay, why is that one on hold? Do we know?
That's the one that started the ADU discussion.
Okay, thank you.
And there's always a complication because they're in a floodplain. And
Yes.
so FEMA rules tend to overrule
Mhm.
anything. And so Pikes Peak Regional Building actually does the floodplain compliance. We do not,
Right,
but I would say with what's been recommended here, they would not be able to proceed as they would like to.
okay. Thank you. And then, let's see, approval memo sent, okay. Do any of y'all have questions on these?
I just have a request, since it is such a small printout. Whoever develops this, if they could perhaps change the orientation of the document and maybe reduce the margins and increase the font and the cells that we can see.
The landscape? That, it would definitely help my old eyes. I'd really appreciate that if it's doable. If it's not, that's understandable, but yeah, that's a good point. Especially with all the details that are included in here, which are useful. Okay, let's move on to discussion items. And that is the comprehensive plan.
That was put on at my request. We need to kind of get that kick started and going again where it was approved in 2019. And that is a critical document when we're applying for grants. And so we need to try to get any kind of public meetings going, additional input, changed input. But yeah, we need to kind of kickstart that and get together some kind of, probably get a plan together to see, okay, what are our next steps going to be?
Okay. And just because I haven't been part of this in the past, how expanded or condensed is that as far as timeline? Is it over a 1 month period, a 3 month period? I have no idea.
Okay, so they're
What-
generally
what's the
good for
rec-
about 10 years. So we're probably looking at 2029. We could do an update every 5 years or once every 10 years. The board, I don't think, has really set any kind of hard deadlines as far as, do we want a 5-year update or do we want a 10-year update? So that's, at least that from me going from memory at this point, that's an open discussion.
Okay. And does it impact our grant requests and et cetera if it's more updated, if it's kept more up to date as opposed to a 10-year plan?
Let's just say if we have one that identifies what we're going after in the grants, that helps. That seems to be one of the particulars that the grantors are
Mhm.
kind of key on.
That you're applying or applying for grants for the things that are actually in your,
Yep.
okay.
So if I may, Brandy, the board did approve a comp plan interim update sometime last year. It wasn't gonna, I proposed that we updated the visions and get some more public input, do like a 5-year update. The board was on board with that. And so what I can do for next meeting, I can submit a proposal back to Bo with some updated timelines. The Board of Trustees empowered us to work with the other committees. It was going to be to inform the budget process and also to update some of the visioning in the current comp plan so that the next update in 2029 could start from a little fresher perspective. And so I'm willing to resubmit a timeline on that for our next meeting. And then we can go from there if you're happy with that.
That sounds good. Thank you so much.
Chairman,
Go ahead.
if I may, just wanted to speak as a BOT trustee. I would certainly entertain a review by the PC if you want, direction, just a review of the master plan.
Mhm.
And then if you want to formulate an update, if you want to formulate another 10-year projection, we would entertain that recommendation.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Any other discussion or comments on that? And if and as, we've discussed a few things even just during this meeting that may be points for update discussions. So, please comb back through your notes and your minds, and if you have things that have either been brought to your attention or that you think need to be readdressed, we can start looking at those.
Are you talking specific to the comp plan? Yeah. I did, for my part, I saw the state has some resources out there about writing comp plans. So for my action, I'll see what that actually says and maybe put together a couple pages of highlights.
That would be also very helpful. And if you would also provide that to the staff so that they can make sure and share it out with everyone.
Well, I'll just, should I just give it to the staff to put in our packet next time? And then it goes
Yeah, let's
both
do that.
ways? Okay.
Let's do that.
Just my thought is that when I've worked on grants, this kind of a resource really makes the job so much easier.
Okay.
And, I think that this update would only help, so it realigns things and makes things probably more specific than it was years ago. And
Okay.
yeah, it could only help.
Okay, so just for my understanding, when we're looking at potentially scheduling these, would those be evening meetings such as this, or would those be maybe even like the very last discussion be something that would potentially be held on a Saturday when more people might attend?
I'm
You're
sorry.
talking
we
about
were-
for public input?
Right, for the public input meetings?
Mhm.
Would those be primarily in the evenings, during the work week, or would we be looking at more like on Saturdays so that more people could attend, or a combination of both where the
You
last,
may,
where
you
the,
may want to consider a combination of both
Okay.
for the town manager and intro meetings that we had, the meet and greets. The first one was held during the day. It was fairly well attended. The second one was held at night. It wasn't as well attended. It was backwards from what I thought it would be. I thought
Okay.
we'd have more people at the evening one, but we actually had more people
so maybe have the
during the
first,
day, during the week.
Rocco, maybe we have the first and the last one be on a Saturday? Potentially? And then any others? How many meetings are typically held for those discussions? Again, just,
I think it's pretty much a variable.
okay,
Because, if you hold one, you get a lot of input. You get a lot of people showing up, fantastic. And then you hold the next one and you get like one or two. And then if you hold a third and you're down to the same one or two,
diminishing returns.
you get this diminishing thing, like you say. And,
Okay.
at one point, you might have meetings for just input, but then another meeting for, okay, here's what we
The
took
recommended
as your
changes.
input, and here's what we want to go forward with. And you get kind of a last ditch
Okay,
chance to comment.
okay, that sounds good.
About involving the elementary school in, as a way of, or
Or-
at least inviting children to participate.
Participation for input?
Yeah.
Yes, you could. They actually have projects here in town.
Right.
So, you could go to UPass Elementary and say, hey, would you like to participate in potentially planning for the future? And you could have the kids come in and give you a list of things they'd like to potentially see in our comp plan.
Yeah, that's all I was thinking.
Go ahead.
Chairman. Yeah. I know that, from my experience with PRT, we had a, policy where we'd had 3, public meetings, but we spread them out.
Mhm.
I wouldn't do anything under, inside 3 months, more like 6 months. And that way, in the final analysis, you protect yourself from someone coming up and say, well, I didn't have a chance to give you my public input.
Mhm.
So that's a good way to protect yourself. And the other thing was that during your public meetings, you should have we would have work sessions in PRT to develop a concept.
Mhm.
In other words, it's just a guideline for the public because they need a little guidance as to what you're looking for. Otherwise, it comes in like a shotgun. It's really hard to gather up the pieces.
Okay.
Thank you.
And when y'all did that, did you allow for email input as well, or was it in person only?
We always had Zoom.
Well, okay, or Zoom, but
yeah.
spoken is what I'm getting at, either, so not submitted by email as a written suggestion.
There's no reason why you couldn't have that as an option.
Okay, thank you.
We can put it, when we get there, it's pretty easy to add forms to our current website, the town website.
Okay. All right, any other points of discussion?
Yes, I have one, but if you just give me a little second here, I want to try to see if I can't send an image to Commissioner Blasey since he's not here. Of course, my phone's not going to cooperate. Okay, on your desk, and Commissioner Blasey, I apologize, I just had time to put paper copies out. And I'm sending Commissioner Blasey, I just texted you, hopefully, something that you can look at. There were a couple things. One, there is a request for a enforcement process. That is the draft that I left on a copy on everyone's desk. It's fairly high level and it stops when we either issue a stop order, a citation, or just come to an end, and those are the circles. So yeah, if you have comments, send them to me on that, because I'm the keeper of the swim lane.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item is something that I'm thinking we're going to have extreme trouble with. I've highlighted a section in the code 12-46E2, which states increases in runoff from the 10-year and 100-year frequency storms due to development, redevelopment, or change in use activity on the site shall be detained within the development and released at a rate no greater than existed prior to development. What that means is here at Town Hall, you see the concrete retaining pit we have. That, to me, that means everyone would have to have basically retention, some kind of retention pond or pit. And there are parcels in town that this would just be physically impossible. And so I believe staff has the ability to waive certain items, but this is something I'd like for you to take a look at to see if, do we really want this in our code? And again,
Well,
just,
and it's something the town's already doing at this, the lower land level, right?
we have not been doing this. This was brand new with this land use code.
But you said the town has a retention
Town hall
Oh, okay.
Town hall has a retention pond. And that's the point. It's like, okay, if you got a 5,000 square foot lot and you're putting up anything, where are you going to put it? Because you're going to, most of your usable property is going to be taken up with septic systems now.
Okay, so is this something we need to look at and probably discuss at the next meeting?
Yes, please.
Okay. Accepted and concurred.
Also serves the fire station.
Yeah, whatever it's served, but yeah, just to have that as a requirement for any new development, that just, to me, looks like a problem waiting to happen and could almost prohibit someone from even beginning to develop on their property.
And do we already have somewhere in the code, I don't remember exactly, but somewhere in the code that if it displaces a certain square footage of land, they already have to do things like this separately than here. Like if it's a large development or like a business moving in, that's like a Walmart. Obviously that won't be it, but something like that. Do we already have provisions in place that if it is an extremely large square footage that it's impacting?
I would have to research our section on the all the major subdivisions.
Okay,
Because I
Yes.
think under major subdivisions, we do have some potential catch-all phrases, but this applying to, and that was one of the things I was wondering about. Should this apply to just the huge
yeah,
potential developments? But right now it's pretty much on everything.
okay,
And that just seems too prohibitive for me.
agreed. I won't be here next time, so I'm gonna give you all my recommendation that be geared towards extremely large developments or, businesses, and that it not be for individual small personal individual development.
Yeah, I guess. We should look at.
Yeah, we definitely need to. I'm just giving you my
What,
my 2
as,
cents.
as the developments and, I would think it would not only be for subdivisions, but,
Yeah,
the potential for a large building
yeah,
or,
like I say,
or a parking lot.
apologize, I didn't have this ready to go into the agenda, but
No, it's,
I just
it's
finished it up
fine.
like
Nope, this is
yesterday.
fine to give to us for something to look at. You gave us homework. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I just want to see, be clear about what already exists.
Okay, any other points of discussion? Nothing heard. Our next meeting will be March 11th. I will be unable to attend. I will be conducting my annual training for reserves. So y'all have fun.
You too.
And it is now 7:56 and we are closing this meeting.